Hey everyone, it's Cosmo the Coder here, and it's Tuesday, May 17th, 2016, and this is my review of the Humble Deep Silver Bundle 2. Now, I will actually go over what the Humble Deep Silver Bundle 1 contained, as it does contain some of these games already in this bundle. But without further ado, we'll get rid of this, and turn this on. And first of all, I'm going to make a point to note that Humble are now sort of showing you a currency conversion on the actual tiers. They're not doing it for the green tier because I assume it sort of goes up and down, and they don't want to give you sort of mislead you on that. So, or they're just trying to more point you at the fact that these are more fixed prices and try and get you to sort of go for these more than say the green tier. But that's just my opinion on that. It also makes it a bit easier because, as always, I give my prices in pounds, so you can pretty much figure out where things are in what I'm saying when I actually give you prices of games on Steam. Anyway, first up, we have got Sacred 3 Gold. What if it actually works when I click on it? Sacred 3 is basically an arcade hack and slash game for up to 4 players. It's basically an action RPG that apparently allows for cooperative play. Unfortunately, really reading from what's on Steam, it's got some mostly negative reviews. The biggest complaint seems to be that it's a very poor sequel to the other Sacred games. It removes all the good elements that were in the first 2 games, such as an open world. It had a large variety of missions, and it replaces them with a limited world and extremely linear missions. As you can see from the video, it looks fairly similar to sort of Diablo, sort of top-down hack and slash game. Sadly, it's not really worth a lot of money. It's $14.99 on Steam. Not a bad price for it, considering, but apparently it's just not that good. Risen now, or Ryzen. I never know how you pronounce this thing. $7.99 on Steam. It's an open world RPG set in a gothic fantasy world. It's essentially a very similar sort of game to sort of Skyrim, with sort of magic and the general sort of RPG-esque elements that you expect from a fantasy game. It's got some great reviews on Steam, and it's actually got 77 on Metacritic, but some of the actual complaints about the game are that it has a rather complicated combat system, but overall it's actually considered quite a good game, and for the most part possibly the strongest of the 3 games that are available in the Risen sort of trilogy, shall we say. So definitely a good look out for the price. Risen 2 is also $7.99 on Steam, and apparently takes place several years after actual Risen. Now, you do actually get the DLCs with this game as well, so that's also quite worth a little bit of money as well. However, again, most of the complaints are about the combat again, and some problems with the mouse control. Supposedly, it could be from a bad port from the console. So it's only 69% on Metacritic. So again, not a bad price for a fairly good game. Saints Row 2. Now, if you don't know what Saints Row is, it's essentially a sort of clone of Grand Theft Auto. Well, at least Grand Theft Auto 4 and 5, and that's probably as close as you're going to get. It's actually quite a well-received kind of game. It's similar in the sense that it's an open world action co-op shooter. Now, I'll mention something about the co-op in a minute. It's considered quite a good clone of GTA. It's basically involving gangs and gang warfare. It's got some good reviews on Steam. It's got 72% on Metacritic, and it's considered, a fairly good staple point in the Saints Row sort of quadrilogy, if that's even a word. Now, the co-op stuff that I mentioned, it does use GameSpy, which, as you may or may not know, closed down a few years ago. It is still possible to play it on co-op, but the best way for you to do that is basically look at the forums on Steam to actually give you an idea of how you do it. You basically have to create a virtual LAN. It sounds more complicated than it is, and you may not actually want to play cooperative, but if it's something that you and your friends want to do, that's certainly worth a look at. Next up, Dead Island, Game of the Year Edition. Now, this is actually $19.99 on Steam. It's an action co-op sort of game set in an open world with RPG elements, where you basically need to escape a holiday resort that's had a outbreak of zombies. It's kind of somewhere between sort of Left 4 Dead and what's the other thing called? Dead Rising, where you basically utilize your sort of skill sets to build weapons to sort of go through this sort of the island and complete missions in order to actually escape. It's got, the reviews are very positive on Steam. It's 80% on Metacritic, and it's quite simply a game where you hack and slash and kill zombies for the sheer hell of it, trying to complete missions. Can't really say much more than that, really. Oh, and it doesn't, as it's the Game of the Year edition, it does include all the DLCs and so on and so forth. So worth it certainly, just for 70 pence. Okay, moving straight on then into the green tier, which at the moment is $3.29, which off the top of my head is roughly £2, say £2.30, £2.40-ish, depending on if my math's roughly right. But regardless of that, it's going to go up and down anyway. Dead Island Riptide is again $19.99. It's the sequel, if it actually opens. Actually, I clicked on it twice in there. It's a sequel, sort of, to Dead Island, where basically it continues on the story with apparently the same characters and everything. There's not much point in me telling you that it's pretty much identical to the original Dead Island, except for the fact that a lot of people don't actually like it compared to the first one. Their biggest complaint is that the story is pretty mediocre compared to the first one. The missions are mainly fetch quests, and beyond that, it's sort of a excuse to make more of the same game, it seems to be. It's only 61% on Metacritic, and all things considered, it's not bad for the price, let's put it that way. Killer is Dead. Now, I'm actually a bit of a fan of Killer is Dead, although it has its issues. Killer is Dead is $14.99 on Steam. It's essentially a hack and slash action game that has a very unique art style, sort of cell shaded, very sort of I was trying to think of this sort of somewhere between sort of cell shading and manga, and I don't know. It's kind of difficult to explain without seeing it. Hopefully, you'll see it in a minute on the video. It's actually it's a translation from I believe a Japanese game, which is probably one of the biggest complaints about this game, is that it's quite a bad sort of translation. Some of the actual sort of voice acting is bad in terms of the English translation, but overall it's got some great reviews. It's basically a similar sort of game to Sacred. Well, not Sacred. I'm trying to think what it's very similar to Devil May Cry. That was it. I'm getting jumbled again, as you can see by there. So it's essentially a fairly quite clever game, but the biggest sort of the biggest sort of complaint I can sort of see is the translation or the voice acting, and also that the story is quite convoluted, quite difficult to follow, and it doesn't really have quite a good ending or true ending, if you want to make sense of that. So that's the only sort of complaints I've been able to find. Moving on, Saints Row 3, the full package, and I'm sort of underlining that, making sure that you appreciate that you're getting not just the game but also all the DLCs. $14.99 on Steam. A lot of people consider this to be one of the strongest of the games in the sort of overall four games. I'm trying to avoid saying quadrilogy just because I struggle saying it. It's got some overwhelmingly positive reviews on the Steam, sort of the high 90s, and it's 84 on Metacritic. Pretty much the same sort of thing as Saints Row 2, but it sort of ups the ante a bit and makes it a bit. It changes sort of the storyline a bit, sort of less gang warfare, more. They sort of go some more humorous, more sort of. I'm struggling for the right sort of word. They sort of try and get rid of the gang element and sort of take the same characters and in this case these characters become famous, and so they sort of look into the more the sort of celebrity world, the more sort of that kind of. I'm going to give up now before I try and dig myself. I'm digging a hole. I'm going to get out of this hole quick. It's a good game basically, and considering the price, you're getting quite a lot of content for that price. Now, this one is a bit of a thing. Humble offering, a voucher which gives you 75% off the Dead Island Definitive Collection in the Humble store. Now, if I actually go to the Humble store, which I will open here, and so the Dead Island Definitive Collection is $24.99. Now with 75% off, that basically knocks it down off the top of my head about £6-ish pounds basically. Now that's a fairly good deal, but what isn't in my head a good deal is what you're actually getting. Now essentially the Definitive Edition is a re-release of the first 2 Dead Island games, including all the DLCs and including with HD graphics. Now my biggest sort of complaint about that is that you're already getting the first 2 games with all the DLCs, so all you're actually getting for your money is HD graphics, which makes no sense to me whatsoever. Top that off with the fact that if I actually open Steam up, if this works, where's it gone? There we go. So if we go into the store a second here, and I go to Dead Island, Game of the Year. So I actually own Dead Island, the first one. There is currently on offer on Steam for a loyalty discount that if you own both the first game and the second game, you can get money off. Now, as you can see, I only own one of these games, and I can't actually say for certain whether you'll get 85% off the second game. But if you do, then there's a good chance that the actual deal on Humble is worse than the deal on Steam. Now, I can't confirm this yet because I'm not actually going to buy this bundle because I own most of the games that are actually in the bundle, and in general it seems a bit dumb to me, this whole voucher thing for it. It seems a good idea if, I suppose, no, actually it doesn't seem like a good idea at all. What am I talking about? It's rubbish. Anyway, I'm going to move on. So in general, I don't like this voucher at all. It doesn't make any sense why you would want to buy the Definitive Collection when you've got the first 2 games, unless you really, really love the HD graphics. I mean, it doesn't actually say anything else that you get more with this package, you know. Anyway, blue tier. Moving on. Saints Row 4. Now, you do not get the whole lot. There is a definitive edition for Saints Row 4. It is but this is actually just the base game. It's, and I've lost my place, $10.99 on Steam. It's got some great reviews. It's actually a higher Metacritic rating than Saints Row 3, but generally speaking, the reviews like this game, but they prefer Saints Row 3 if it comes down to it. It's a bit of a sort of divergence in terms of storyline, in that you play, I believe you play the president, and I can't actually remember who it is you play, but you actually have to work on fighting aliens and God knows what else. And the DLCs are actually a bit zany, a bit crazy. So in general, it's the same sort of stuff as all the previous games, but it just takes it to a whole new level. So, and as you can see, it looks like you've got superpowers and God knows what else. And it's the conclusion to the game that changed all the rules. So there you go. Finally, Risen 3 Titan Lords. Again, another game in the Risen series. Generally, there's plenty of mixed reviews on Steam. It's 65% on Metacritic, and like I said, the first one's considered the best one of the 3. So you're pretty much getting the same sort of stuff throughout. The theme's pretty clear throughout the entire bundle, in all honesty. Now, you'll notice there is no expansion on this bundle. So there is not going to be any sort of further games added to this, which is a bit of a shame, really. Because in general, this bundle is relatively identical to the previous Deep Silver bundle, which I can tell you contained, if I actually click here, and I can't show you unfortunately because that would actually show you the game keys and my account and everything else, because I can't actually go back in time for it. It included Risen 2 Dark Waters, Sacred 2, which so the previous game to that one, Gold Edition, Saints Row 2 and Saints Row 3. It also included the Dead Island Game of the Year, Saints Row the Third, the DLC full package, and Risen, Sacred Citadel, and Metro 2033. So pretty much, what did I say? So pretty much sort of the first tier was included, and some other elements from the second tier definitely. Now, as I said before, I'm not buying this bundle. I own Saints Row 4 and completely, and including all the DLC. The vouchers are a bit silly. Killer is Dead I own. I'm not interested in Dead Island at all, to be honest with you. I've never played the first one. I watched a playthrough of the first one and saw how buggy and how glitchy it was. And in general, the bundle's good if you don't own any of the games. If you're a newcomer to the sort of the Deep Silver, it's definitely worth a look at. But overall, I'm not really impressed by it, to be honest with you. And the fact there's no expansion with it as well, it just seems a bit cheeky, in my opinion, especially with this 75% voucher. Anyway, I shall move quickly on to what was given to the Capcom bundle. If you remember, there was a promise of extra games, and there have been 2 extra games added. The first one up is Bionic Commando. So this is actually a sequel to the NES system original Bionic Commando, whereas Bionic Commando Rearmed was kind of a remaking or reimagining or whatever you want to call it. It's actually a third-person action shooter game where you basically use the same sort of mechanics. You run around, sort of, I don't know, what do you want to call it, Tomb Raider-esque, and utilizing your robotic arm as a grappling hook, you basically go around and fight enemies in a similar sort of style as Bionic Commando Rearmed, but in 3 dimensions instead. It's got some fairly good reviews. It's 69% on Metacritic, and considering it's $6.49, it's not a bad deal at all, really. And I need to scroll down. Now, the last bit is a bit of DLC for DMC, or Devil May Cry, where you basically play as Virgil, which is a brand new character. It's a brand new chapter in the story. So you basically get an extra chapter, and you get a different character. Apparently it's Dante's twin brother Virgil. It's again quite a nice little, quite a well received bit of DLC. It's $6.99 on Steam. Definitely, if it's worth an add-on, well, worth the money if you've already paid for it anyway. So that said, it's a good deal, not too bad. Now, there has been a Humble Store sort of sale, which I have sort of been keeping an eye on, but other than that, I haven't been too fussed about the actual cost of things. So that is pretty much it for me, guys. Thank you once again for watching. Let me know what you think of my opinions. Like and subscribe for more videos like this, and of course you're welcome to dislike, although let me know why you dislike, because that always helps. I apologize if last week I was talking a bit too fast. It's just one of those things that happens sometimes when I sort of go off piste and I start thinking about other stuff. I'm working on it, that's all I can ever say. Thanks for watching, guys, and until next week, I'm trying to think if there's any monthly bundles or anything. There isn't. Until next week, I will see you next time.